The House of Trovi, the family to which Navier belonged, had produced multiple empresses over generations. The predecessor emperor, Osis III, had chosen Navier to be the future empress of the crown prince. Her marriage to Sovieshu was one of convenience, but fortunately they had maintained a good relationship since their youth. The nobles considered them an adorable pair of lovebirds, and they spent many days with their heads together, discussing the empire they would build together in the future. Navier was the perfect empress until today. Navier, Empress of the Eastern Empire, arrived and calmly accepted the divorce. Her announcement shocked everyone, prompting reactions of disbelief as many exclaimed that the situation was preposterous and urged her to calm down. Meanwhile, the mistress, Rashta, smirked and fell into Sovieshu's arms. Despite the uproar, Navier stood firm, agreeing to the divorce without any objections. Sovieshu expressed a conflicted mix of emotions. He admitted feeling remorseful, but also relieved. The atmosphere was tense, but then Navier made another bold declaration. She requested approval for her remarriage. The room fell into stunned silence. A remarriage? With whom? A knock at the door drew everyone's attention. The door opened to reveal a man with blonde hair, Emperor Heinrich. As he walked toward Navier, the surprise was evident on everyone's faces, including Sovieshu's. With a composed demeanor, Navier announced that Emperor Heinrich was the one she wished to remarry. The scene then shifts to a flashback from a few months earlier. The palace was abuzz with tension as servants were ordered to attend to the mistress, Rashta, a task they performed with visible displeasure. The day was unusually quiet as Navier's servants dressed her. Noticing their uncharacteristic silence, Navier inquired about their mood. The servants, visibly upset, revealed their frustration. They were angered by Sovieshu's decision to bring Rashta into the palace and the special treatment she received. They described Sovieshu's excessive concern for Rashta, implying there was more to their relationship. Despite their attempts to convince Navier that something was amiss, she chose to trust Sovieshu, even though her heart was troubled by doubt. During dinner, Navier confronted Sovieshu, asking if it was true that he had found a slave during his hunting trip and brought her back. Sovieshu deflected the question, asking where she had heard such a thing. Navier insisted that the source was not important, but Sovieshu, in a warning tone, told her to drop the subject, emphasizing their limited time together. Feeling dismissed, Navier remained silent for the rest of the meal. The next morning, Navier woke to the sound of her servants expressing their concerns about the situation. They asked if Sovieshu had said anything about the woman. Navier, feeling the weight of their worry, explained that Sovieshu claimed the girl was accidentally caught in one of his traps and that he brought her back to ensure she was nursed back to health. He had been displeased with Navier's inquiries. One servant, angered by Sovieshu's reaction, shared her frustration, having seen similar situations with her own father. Another servant expressed sympathy for Navier's predicament. Navier recounted her mother's advice, that she mustn't be hurt if Sovieshu took a mistress, as it was a common occurrence among royals. Her mother had told her that even if Sovieshu had mistresses, they were merely that, while Navier was the empress. Despite this advice, Navier couldn't shake the hollow feeling inside her. Her servant comforted her, acknowledging that it was natural for Navier to feel this way, given her long-standing betrothal and marriage to Sovieshu. Navier pondered whether Sovieshu would feel the same emptiness if she had another man by her side. She resolved that there was no reason she would ever have to see the girl in person, and that even if the slave became Sovieshu's mistress, she wouldn't be able to frequent the places of business or social circles. Navier concluded that she must not allow herself to become more impassioned, and that each of them would live their own lives. Most importantly, she reminded herself that she alone could be the Empress of the Eastern Empire. As Navier went outside to read under a tree, she overheard conversations about Sovieshu's unusual behavior, with people gossiping about how he personally brought meals to Rashta. Curious and somewhat disheartened, Navier walked away, only to encounter Lady Rashta, who greeted her warmly. Navier turned her head around and ignored Rashta. Undeterred, Rashta attempted to breach protocol, a shocking action for everyone present. The anxious servants tried to stop Rashta from approaching Navier, but she insisted on introducing herself. Navier responded with a curt greeting and walked away, hoping they would never cross paths again. Then Rashta reached out and grabbed a part of Navier's dress, causing it to tear. This sudden action shocked everyone present. One of the servants found her behavior insolent. Rashta quickly apologized, explaining that she had wanted to call out to Navier but didn't know how to address her. Another servant sternly corrected her, reminding her that Navier was the Empress of the Eastern Empire and that her behavior was inappropriate. Rashta insisted she knew who Navier was, which surprised the Empress. Smiling, Rashta reintroduced herself. Navier, barely concealing her irritation, acknowledged her, referring to her status as a slave. Her servant, sensing Navier's displeasure, clarified that Lady Rashta was not a slave. Navier, maintaining her composure, accepted this explanation, seeing no need to argue further. Rashta explained that she wanted to introduce herself properly since they would be seeing more of each other. She was unsure how to address Navier, but Navier instructed her to call her Her Majesty the Empress. As Navier turned to leave, Rashta attempted to grab her again, but her servant intervened. At that moment, Sovieshu appeared and overheard the servant referring to Rashta in a derogatory manner. He gave Navier an unhappy gaze and rushed to Rashta, covering her with his coat as she began to cry. Rashta peeked at Navier with a triumphant look, making the Empress uncomfortable. Navier decided to walk away with her servants, but Sovieshu halted them, pointing at her servant. He ordered Navier to leave the servant behind. Navier, maintaining her dignity, refused unless he provided a good, solid reason, emphasizing that her lady-in-waiting was the esteemed daughter of a high-ranking family. Sovieshu, continuing his domineering stance, reminded Navier that her lady-in-waiting was also a citizen of his empire. He then ordered his soldiers to lock her up for 3 days. Navier protested, insisting that the punishment was excessive. Sovieshu disagreed, pointing out that Rashta was injured and under his care, yet Navier's lady-in-waiting had insulted her by calling her a filthy wench. He questioned how Navier could still consider his punishment excessive. Trembling with fear, the servant reluctantly agreed that the punishment was not excessive. Sovieshu then left with Rashta, patting her head to comfort her, leaving Navier seething with anger. 3 days later, Navier went to the tower to retrieve her servant. She had her bathed in her room and prepared her favorite desserts to comfort her. Just as they were settling, a messenger arrived, summoning Navier to see His Majesty. Though unexpected, Navier accepted the summons. When Navier met with Sovieshu, he questioned the necessity of personally escorting her servant and demanded that she dismiss her. Navier, unhappy with his tone, argued that it was unjust to throw out a servant punished for being devoted to her, especially since her actions were well within the bounds of common sense. Sovieshu pressed her again, asking if she insisted on keeping the servant by her side. Navier firmly reinforced that who she appointed as her lady-in-waiting was her prerogative. Growing tired of the argument, Sovieshu expressed his frustration, asking why Navier couldn't obediently do as he said for once. Navier's blood boiled at his words. She retorted that as the Empress, she was not someone to be at his beck and command. In response, Sovieshu cruelly remarked that this was why he couldn't help but compare her to Rashta. He then dismissed Navier, saying he was tired of arguing with her. After Navier left, Sovieshu rang the bell for water. Unsurprisingly, Rashta appeared. He was pleased to see her as his attendant and showed his affection by petting her. Rashta spotted a pumpkin pie and expressed her excitement. Sovieshu couldn't help but compare her reaction to Navier's, noting how he gave Navier expensive jewels, yet her reaction was so frigid, while it took so little to bring joy to Rashta. As he thought this, he wiped the pie from her lips. Rashta, continuing their conversation, suggested that Navier probably didn't appreciate her gifts because she had grown up without knowing a day of hardship. She implied that Navier took her gifts of precious gems for granted. Realizing she might have overstepped, Rashta quickly added that she didn't mean to speak ill of Navier, but that it was common for anyone raised with plenty to act that way. Soviet-Shu looked at Rashta with admiration and gently touched her hair. Riding on the favorable atmosphere, Rashta inquired about becoming his mistress. Soviet-Shu, however, wanted to take things slow and assured her that he had a plan in mind. On a bright, shiny morning, news arrived that His Majesty had decided to appoint Rashta as his mistress. Navier calmly acknowledged the news, though her servant was outraged, pointing out that while Navier had been busy preparing for the New Year's ceremony, Soviet-Shu had been preparing to take Rashta as his mistress. Navier had been steeling herself for this moment, but was surprised at how quickly it had come. She maintained her composure and inquired about the timing of the appointment. Her servant sighed and mentioned that, according to rumors, it would happen as soon as possible, before the New Year's ceremony. Meanwhile, in the reading room, Rashta and one of Soviet-Shu's servants were dealing with the document that would make her officially Soviet-Shu's mistress. The servant explained the process. The Prime Minister would hand His Majesty the notarized document. Soviet-Shu would sign it first, and then Rashta would sign below him. However, Rashta struggled with writing her name, revealing that she did not know how to write. The servant reassured her that it was nothing to be ashamed of and offered to teach her how to write her name. He also mentioned that the Empress might send her a welcome gift, as was customary, to show recognition and acceptance of the mistress into the royal household. This made Rashta happy, and she wondered if Navier would give her a gift. Navier, however, decided not to give Rashta a gift, much to the relief of her servants. She explained her reasoning. There were 3 main reasons for an empress to send a mistress a gift: if they were friends, if the mistress was a high-ranking noble, or if the mistress was of the same bloodline as the empress. Rashta did not meet any of these criteria, so Navier saw no reason to go out of her way to send her a gift. The servants then brought up a rumor about the prince from the Western Kingdom attending the New Year's ceremony. They heard that he was incredibly handsome, and that one look into his eyes could captivate any woman. However, he was also known to be stubborn and was rumored to be involved with many women, yet had fathered no children. The servants speculated about the truth of these rumors and wondered if he was really coming. Navier, shocked by their curiosity, confirmed that although she couldn't verify the rumors, the prince would indeed be attending the ceremony. Just then, a servant entered, announcing that Grand Duke Rylan Roth of Winchester had sent his regards along with a gift of the finest silks in all the Eastern Empire. Navier noted that the Grand Duke was at it again, and instructed the servant to convey her gratitude, but to tell him that his regards were enough. The Grand Duke, an extended family member of Soviet-Shu, had no interest in the throne, but had a strong thirst for power. He regularly sent bribes in hopes of requesting special favors in return. As Navier was about to enjoy a sip of tea, the servant announced that Lady Rashta wanted to see her. Despite her reluctance, Navier granted the request. Rashta greeted her with a casual manner, expressing how nice it was to see her again. Navier, hiding her emotions as she had become accustomed to in unpleasant situations, congratulated Rashta on becoming a mistress. Rashta happily thanked her and said she had come to see her sister, the Empress. This startled Navier, and a servant spilled tea in surprise. Navier, shocked, questioned, "What? Sister?" Rashta continued, explaining that they were now sisters because they shared the same husband. Disgusted, Navier responded, "What?" Undeterred, Rashta asked if she could call Navier Big Sister from now on. Navier, maintaining a calm demeanor, questioned Rashta without expression. She made it clear that sharing the same husband did not make them sisters, and firmly rejected the notion of being called Big Sister. Rashta, taken aback by Navier's response, began to cry, asking if Navier disliked her. Navier explained that her feelings were irrelevant and that Rashta's new status as a mistress did not alter their relationship. Feeling the frosty glares of everyone around her, Rashta retreated and confided in a servant, claiming that Navier hated her. The servant, realizing Rashta had gone to see Her Majesty, was surprised and struggled to explain why that was inappropriate. As Rashta recounted her direct conversation with Navier, the servant was shocked by her forwardness. Later, as Navier was taking a walk in the garden, she noticed a feather floating down and caught it. She looked up to see a beautiful bird. As she approached, the bird flew down to her hand, with a note attached to its feet. Curiously, she opened the note, which read, "I am a guest from abroad who will soon arrive at the New Year's ceremony, and I write this note while drunk." Navier smiled at the playful message. Her servants, noticing her interest, suggested she write back. Amused, Navier penned a reply with a touch of humor. "Your bird has found its way to me. If it is able to find its way back, I shall be relieved, for it means it must be cleverer than its inarticulate drunk master." She tied the note back to the bird and released it. The bird flew back to a man who read the note and smiled, thinking to himself that if he wanted to see Navier again, he would have to cleverly find his way back to her. He mused, calling her "my queen" in his thoughts, intrigued by her wit and grace.